Hello, this is What You're All About with another watch review. In this video we're looking at the Lew and Huey Orthos, which is one of their new diver watches. It's released at the same time as its bigger brother Cerberus. It's a little bit more affordable than Cerberus though, and it is, in my eyes, a very nice looking watch. So the RRP of it is $470 or 312 pounds. We'll have a look into the specs shortly as well, but in my eyes I think it is a very well built and high spec watch for the money. So thinking about the specs then, first of all, the weight, it's 210 grams, so you do get a lot of watch for the money. It has a Seiko movement, the Seiko NH35, which is also known as the 4R36 caliber, which is a very well-made, sturdy, dependable and reliable movement. Sapphire crystal on the top, and just a generally really well-made watch for the money. So straight off the bat, you know, it's quite a reasonable price for a watch with specs like this and made to the standard that it is. Okay, so let's think about the case first of all then. So it's 42mm in diameter, has a lug-to-lug length of 50mm, and it has a height of 13mm. So if I put this on my wrist, which is 7.5 inches, you'll see that it does fit quite comfortably. Obviously the weight is pretty good as well, makes it feel nice and sturdy. The height is quite reasonable as well, makes it look pretty chunky and high quality on the wrist. One thing I do like is the way that the slabbed case is all curved. Usually you'd have a flat bit and then just a curved lug on the end, but it looks like the whole thing is curved, so it's quite pleasing to the eye when it's on the wrist, and also it means that it's very comfortable as well. It fits me perfectly. I'm quite flat wristed rather than a rounded wrist, so it really suits my wrist type perfectly. The lugs actually are 22mm wide. It's got a 22mm wide bracelet, as you can see. So if we continue thinking about the case first, sapphire crystal. So if I come a little bit closer, it has an anti-reflective coating on the underside as well, which does a pretty good job actually. Looks nice in the flesh. Thinking about the finishing of the case as well, we have brushed sides and then polished tops. It's quite interesting to see actually that these little ingresses here are brushed, which is quite nice to see because that matches up with the bracelet nicely. And sometimes watches are just completely polished there, and it looks a bit strange when it matches a brushed bracelet. So it's quite nice to see that. It's a bit of thought that's been put into it. So that's good. And then the case back, the bottom of the case actually is brushed as well, and then the case back itself, screw in case back, is polished. All of the machining on the case is absolutely perfect, as you'd expect for a watch costing this much. No sharp edges or anything like that, no signs of any marks at all whatsoever. It is quite, you know, it feels hefty and it looks hefty as well. The crown is a screw-in crown, and it's probably just the right depth as well. Sometimes crowns on watches can look a little bit out of proportion, but I think it's just the right size. It's quite nice as well that it's got a little indent in the case as well that it sinks into, so that's good. The grip on the crown is perfectly usable and fine, and we see the little Lew and Huey dog etched into the end there, but we'll look at that a little bit closer when I get the macro lens out. Okay, so let's just move on to the case back briefly. So the case back has an image of the I think it's an image of Orthos itself. Orthos is a two-headed dog in Greek mythology. Surrounding this image we have some various details, and we also have the serial number just down here. It's nice to see. It's all very well very well done. It's a little bit light, but then I'm not particularly complaining that much. It's still very pleasing to the eye. So obviously we've got a screw-in crown and a screw-in case back. This means that it's got good water resistance. So the water resistance of the watch is 30 atmospheres or 300 meters, which is really good. You can take it into diving or snorkeling with that kind of depth. So feel free to use this as your standard diving watch. The bezel, I chose this colour because I personally prefer it most. I really like the blue and the orange bezel. I know Chris Vale of Lew and Huey is a real stickler for nice bezels, and the bezel on the Orthos is really nice. Has a really good action, clicks nicely. It's 120 click, so it feels good in the hand when you're using it, and it looks really good as well. You can really see it from afar, and it makes quite a statement, this orange bezel, when that gets coupled with the galvanic sunburst style dial. It's really quite a fetching watch that I really like the style of. I really like it. So moving on to the dial then. Obviously the main feature is the blue, and you can see the way the light reflects on the sunburst of it. It's like the brushing is outwards from the center. So when you're rotating the watch, the light just hits it in different angles and spins around the dial, which is a nice feature. We also have these applied hour markers, which are filled with lume and are very nicely made. Big fat batons suit the style of the watch nicely. Everything on the dial is pretty flawless actually. Everything's really well made and put together. The printing on it is nice and fine. I think it can be a little bit hard to read. As you can see in certain lights, the logo and the Orthos at the bottom can tend to disappear a little bit, but that doesn't really bother me at all. I am one of the ones who aren't particularly fussed about the logo, the dog logo. I know many people love it. Some people, aren't so fussed about it. I'm one of the ones who aren't so fussed about it. So to me, having a more subtle logo is better for my personal taste. The date window is cut out of the dial with a nice little printed surround, which then links up to this minute track around the outside. So the design is all really well done. It's all really clever, all mixes together nicely. And then it's interesting actually that this very outside edge is a grey edge. So it almost breaks up the dial a little bit, makes it appear a little bit smaller than it actually is. Because if you had the blue all the way to the edge, then maybe the blue would be a little bit too much. So it's a very clever way of making it a little bit more subtle, even though it's still got this wow factor. So that's quite a good point. Just looking at the hands now. So the second hand has this nice little V on the end, and then the hour and minute hand are both quite fat and chunky again, matching the style of the hour markers and the overall ethos of the watch. Again, it's all very well made, as we'll see when I get the macro lens on. So just to move on to the bracelet, if I get in focus, come on. It's all brushed, and it's really, really well made bracelet, really sturdy with nice H links. It's got solid end links as well. So the bracelet is really impressive for this price. It's really good. The buckle again as well is double locking, so we have one lock here with the buttons and then another lock over the top. This is really sturdy as well, really well made, really impressive. It sort of almost reminds me of like a Seiko buckle, which is obviously saying something. so it's all brushed as well, so you're not too bothered if you slightly ding it, because it won't show up as much as a polished buckle would. So if I just put it on, obviously the bracelet is what contributes to the weight quite a lot. It is a really chunky, impressive thing. All the links are really well made and well put together. Actually, one thing I do need to mention is if you have small wrists, then this watch may not fit you, because as you can see, I've taken all the links I can out. So on this side, there are no more links I can take out, and then on this side again, I'm right at the I've taken out all links I can, and also set it to the smallest setting on the the small adjust on the buckle as well, and even then it's just about fit me. So I am 7.5 inches, so if you do have particularly small wrists, then the bracelet may not fit you. Obviously, you can probably speak to Chris, because he is a really lovely guy, and I'm sure he will help you out and accommodate you. So it may be worthwhile just mentioning to him that you have a small wrist, and he can arrange to have more links fitted with screw-in pins. That is another point, actually. All the links are screw-in, so it is very easy and straightforward to change the size of the bracelet, which is good. Okay, so the movement, I mentioned it before, is a Seiko movement. It's becoming really well, quite renowned for being an excellent movement. The NH35 has quite a standard power reserve of 41 hours for a automatic. It runs at 21.6k beats per hour, so you'll notice it has quite a nice smooth 6 ticks per second sweep. And it's has the added features of being able to hand wind it, and also having a hacking seconds, which, you know, on some of the more affordable Seiko movements you don't get. So that's quite reassuring. Also, it's becoming really well known that it's really well adjusted straight from the factory. So straight from the factory, you're not going to get anything worse than 15 seconds out a day, which obviously is very good for an automatic movement. So this Orthos has proved to be very accurate as well. So maybe there's another stage of tweaking it a little bit more as well that Lew and Huey do. Okay, so let's just get the macro lens on, and we'll have a look at it in closer detail. So let's start with the dial. Here's the hands. As you can see, they're very well cut out and shaped with loomed centres. If we have a look at the hour markers again, similar story to the hands. All really well made. Look at the date window as well. See the printing there, all crisp and clean. And if we just look at the, tell you what, let me just move the hand. If I just move the hands out of the way, we'll be able to see the logo a bit better. There you go, so there's a printing of the logo. Then down here we have the Orthos. And you can see the sunburst outwards pattern on the dial as well, nicely here. So the dial itself is really well put together and executed. Everything is really spot on, basically, which is good. So moving on to the bezel. Have this orange bezel insert with the printing nice and fine as well. Here's the loomed pip at 12. And we have this polished grip around the outside. which helps you to grip it to twist it, which is good. So moving on to the case, has this decent brushed finish down the sides. Spin it over and we'll see the crown. Just clean it up. There's the Lew and Huey dog. See him etched in with the grip just there as well. And we see the thread. Can we just see the thread just in there as well? Okay, so if I just screw that back in. So there it is when it's in place. So I'll just spin it over and we'll be able to have a look at the case back now. So here's the... oh, let me just clean it. Here's the etching of Orthos. Nice and accurately done. And the text around it is all very precise as well. Here's the polished outside with the serial number nice and deeply engraved on it, and the brushed bottom as well. So just moving on to the bracelet, we can see each link is very nicely machined, very well polished, got good edging on it. Looks nice and chunky, and the end links as well, very well made and fit the case perfectly as well, which is good to mention. If I get a shot over there, let's just see it meeting the case. There we go, really, really accurate that is. And then the buckle itself as well. We have Lew and Huey etched on the flap, and of course it's all brushed to match the rest as well. Really well made, put together, nice and sturdy. So there we go. Okay, so obviously it's just over 300 quid, which, let's face it, is a reasonable amount of money, but for that amount of money you do get a really well made watch. As we've seen, every part about it is really well manufactured, put together. It's really heavy duty and sturdy. Has a great movement that you can't really go wrong with. Decent sapphire crystal, good depth of 300 meters, which, to be honest, you don't see too much watches below this price point. So if you like the design, personally I really love the design. I think it's a bit like a Omega Planet Ocean with the orange bezel, and to me that's my personal grail watch. So that's probably why I particularly love the Orthos. I think it looks brilliant. It feels really good in the hand. So yeah, for £300, I would highly recommend it. So that's the Hugh and Louis Orthos, and that's what it's all about.